Whew, whew. Okay, you ready? Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for this? Are you freaking ready? Are you ready? Guys, are you ready? Are you ready for this? Are you ready? Alright, here we go! Dang it! I thought if I built up enough hype that all my fans would come together and be like, yes, Tekking, we're ready, and I somehow would attain superpowers through that. Damn it! Alright, just to let you know, off the cuff, if you think that you could become a YouTube sensation with a lot of followers and that'll somehow ascend you into, a higher state of being, let me just tell you right now, well, you have to have a higher number than 390,000 subscribers, so I don't know, maybe PewDiePie has it, I don't know, talk to him, maybe. Okay, so there's a lot of hullabaloo going around about invisible armament haki last couple of weeks, of course, ever since Luffy and Hyou were in the Sumo Inferno, and Luffy, he recalled that time that Rayleigh smacked a freaking giant elephant the size of a skyscraper on its back just by giving it the hand. He's like, there has to be some other kind of armament haki other than the vulcanization type that we've seen up until now, where Luffy will, vulcanize up his hand, the skin around his hand will have, a really dark, hard shell, like a cockroach shell or something, and then, bam, he smacks into an opponent and he sends flying away. We also have the kind, involving black swords, which is the same basic idea, endowing armament haki into blades, and they permanently are stained black, okay? But there has to be another type to this. It's the same kind of thing that we saw from Sentomarui and Boa Marigold, which is why she's up here. She's right here. I know, it's kind of distracting. Actually, I kind of have a thing for Sandersonia. I know, giant bobblehead, but I don't know, the snake tongue, it just does something for me. I don't know. There's some insight into Tekking's fetishes for the day. But yeah, Boa Marigold was able to do it, as well as Sentomaru. It's actually kind of appropriate, because they both kind of have that sumo kind of style. Sentomaru had a technique called Ashira Dokoi, I think it was called, and so it was basically just like a sumo thrust, but, it basically was a shockwave of haki that, hit Luffy without he actually even coming in contact with him, sent him flying. Marigold had a similar technique that was used for defensive purposes when they were in the arena at Amazon Lily. Luffy went to go kick her, and then she didn't through the thrust. She just kind of laid up her hand like this, flat, and then Luffy's leg hit it, and it just kind of wobbled away. He's made of rubber, so, all of the impact, all of the power from it just kind of canceled when it hit her palm, and the rest of his leg just kind of like a limp rubber band, just, and Luffy was like, what the hell was that? I couldn't hit her. So I'm under the impression that this kind of haki is not necessarily harder to master than the vulcanization, it's just a different type. So perhaps because the way that it's seeming, Rayleigh did not, explain to Luffy, here is the vulcanization kind of haki, and then here's the thing I did against the elephant. Because Luffy here, at the Sumo Inferno, he's trying to knock down opponents with that technique, and he doesn't seem to have a grasp of it. He probably didn't have a lot of time to work on it at Ruskina. Maybe he spent most of the time at Ruskina just working on his observation, getting a basic understanding of haki. Perfecting Gear 4 took up a lot of time, I'm sure. So 2 years just wasn't enough time to learn everything about haki. So, he had the general idea and he knows what he wants to accomplish, but he's like, okay, now I need to figure out what Rayleigh did. And then, of course, in the last chapter, we saw what Hyou could do, which, fun fact, I'm actually filming this before. The chapter's not out yet. It's actually coming out tomorrow. I'm filming this, so you guys have something to watch while I'm at Tekko this weekend. So I read the spoilers, so I know what happens, even though it's not out yet. Whoa, spooky! But we saw what Hyou could do. Okay, so yeah. Now, same thing with vulcanization. There's different levels of that. I mean, you can understand the basic concept, but then there's to the next level. There's understanding how to put armament haki in your sword, and then there's understanding a way higher level of that where it stays endowed in your sword. Same basic idea with this invisible kind of haki. You can understand the basic concept, I'm sure things like what Sentomaru did by just, shockwaving your opponent away, or what Marigold did, just kind of blocking your opponent's blows. That's probably like level 1 of that type of Haki, honestly. And then you get to the insane level that freaking Rayleigh demonstrated, where he just held up one hand. He didn't have to do a thrust or anything. He did something more similar to Marigold, where he just raised up a hand, and unlike Marigold, the elephant didn't even have to stomp down, didn't even have to come in contact with his hand. It was more like in the anime, like Rayleigh was projecting like a ki blast or something out of his hand. And of course, they're gonna make things a little bit more dramatic in the anime, but suffice it to say, Rayleigh like puts up his hand like this. That elephant's foot, probably within like 2 or 3 meters of coming in contact with Rayleigh's like open palm, boom, and then just repelled it away. Sort of like, I don't know how exactly Rayleigh was doing it. Like, he likened it to putting on an invisible suit of armor, but there was certainly some sort of force, some sort of shockwave to push that elephant back. So I can think of 2 possibilities here. Either number 1, the elephant went to go stomp on Rayleigh, hit his like invisible Haki armor barrier, and maybe all of the force that elephant was exerting had nowhere else to go, and it just boom, knocked it straight back. Or Rayleigh was exerting the force himself. Rayleigh's a badass, and we already, know from Luffy, the way Luffy talked about it was like, that was some crazy high-level Haki. We've seen Rayleigh demonstrate all sorts of insanities with Haki. So, either or, I would take it from Rayleigh. If he was able to just project a massive amount of force, kind of like an impact or a rejectile without having one on you, or without learning Roku Ogon, you could just, exert that kind of force. But I like to think it was the former. I like to think that elephant went to go stomp and it hit the freaking Haki, and that force just reflected right back at it. And that's maybe something similar that happened with Marigold, possibly. So that's when we look at this kind of Haki. Then you have the Haki that was displayed at Marineford when there was that huge attack, and then all of the admirals kind of like in unison, like they've practiced this. Like, I can kind of see that. I can see the admirals kind of like, because they don't really like each other. Like, Aokiji and Akainu were at odds even before, their whole fight. But I can understand like Sengoku probably wanting them to train together. He's like, okay, I know you guys don't get along too well, but you're all admirals. You need to train to work together in case we ever need you to work in unison to solve a problem, okay? So they're all like, yes, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. So I can imagine them all training together, like practicing their Haki in unison. So they have that moment where they all line up and they all raise up their hands at the same time and they just block this tremendous blow. Yeah. So obviously that's Admiral level there. So I can imagine like, well, we've actually already seen this in One Piece with Fujitora, but imagine a meteor was coming out of space about to smack into the planet. But we're not talking about one of, like, the meteor that happened at Greenbit that Fujitora summoned. Like, that was a relatively small meteor, all things considered. It left a pretty sizable crater, but nothing, like, world-ending. No, let's say there's a meteor, like, the size of Rhode Island about to smash into the Earth. Rhode Island is the smallest of the U.S. states. You could look it up. But still, if a meteor was that size, or a meteorite was going to crash into the Earth of that size, that would cause a significant amount of damage, right? Something like that, you could maybe get, like, all the greatest Haki users together, like Rayleigh and Sentomarui, okay, fine, throw him in there, but Sengoku, throw him in there, the admirals, maybe they could all raise up their hands at once like they're building the spirit bomb or some shit, and then just boom! And they just shoot the meteor back into space. Like, that might be the capabilities of it at extreme, high level. Now, how is Luffy really going to master this? Is this going to be something where Luffy has to, like, oh, okay, I saw Grandpa Hyou do it, so all it was, I have to, like, flick my wrist with the thrust. That's what I was doing wrong this entire time. I gotta, like, alright, now I got it. Or is this gonna be a thing, like, throughout the entire arc? Zoro's gonna figure out the whole secret behind a black sword and figuring out how to make his own blade black, and while Luffy is like, oh, okay, there's this whole new thing with Haki there. Obviously, Hyou is gonna be his teacher. Think that's pretty much thrown in there right now. Also, we're not really 100% sure what the full ramifications of that were. Hyou at the end of the chapter is like, whoa, we knocked him out, he's crazy, he's an old powerful old man. But the, ramifications of this might be very similar to, like, King Neptune. King Neptune, he's pretty badass. He knows his merman combat. He could, like, Ultramarine, which is an awesome name for a technique, by the way. Or was it Ultramariner? Either way, awesome. Elemental Hero Mariner, here you go. And he's attacking him, and then he knocked his back out. He's like, oh, my back, oh, it hurts to do that. Probably something similar with Hyou, especially all the crap that Hyou's been put through at the freaking prison, you know, because the thing is, Hyou, I mean, he might have had a devil fruit because there's no reason why he wouldn't have used that haki, you know, while being chained up. It made sense for Luffy because while Luffy was chained up with the sea prism, he's a devil fruit user. It drains his energy, so he can't focus on using haki. But if somebody that wasn't a devil fruit user was chained up with sea prism, that shouldn't drain them at all. So they should still be able to use haki and all that stuff. So there's definitely a reason why he's never used it up until now, even after, you know, because Grandpa Hyou got put through the ringer. He's been beaten around by other prisoners, beaten around by the guards. He's like, you're not allowed to have this food. You think if he could just bust that out, you know, maybe he thought like, oh yeah, I could do that if I really wanted to, but what's that going to accomplish? You know, I use my haki to knock out a few guards, then my hip gets, oh, damn it, my hip! He gets knocked out of place, and then the freaking head jailer, the elephant dude, or queen comes out of nowhere and beats the crap out of him and then executes him on the spot. So maybe he's a smart enough dude to realize that, or he's smart enough to realize, because he used to be the head of the Yakuza, for God's sake, he's like, I'm gonna wait until I'm certain that I could escape. I'm going to wait until I get out of here. Or maybe his spirit was broken in a sense. Maybe it was like all of those years he just resigned himself. He's just like, I am no longer the head of the Yakuza. The Yakuza has been tainted. This entire country has been ruined. I don't even care anymore. Just let me die in this prison in peace. You know, maybe that. And then Luffy shows up, and then Luffy inspires him, you know, you are a good man. You might actually have what it takes to break the bonds of this country, of the evil Kaido and Orochi. Bah! Grandpa Hyou beam! Boom! I will now be with you, Luffy, to the end of time. Then he hops on Luffy's back like Master Blaster from freaking Mad Max, and he's like, okay, let's do this, Grandpa Hyou! And they break out of the prison, and so, yeah, that's cool. So, hey, you know, Luffy got some physical training done in the prison, and now he's got, you know, old man Hyou with him to teach him this new kind of invisible haki.
Hey guys, how you doing? Just a little bit of an addendum here. As I said, I filmed this video before the chapter came out properly. I'm just going off the spoilers here. So I figured there was probably going to be a few things in the chapter that I would find out about later, and then I would just talk about it later in this little section of the video. So the first thing I want to bring up is when Hyou defeated Alpaca Man, he basically armament up his entire body, kind of similar to what Virgo did, you know, making his entire body go vulcanization. Then he compressed all of that haki down into his palm, and he used that attack to defeat Alpaca Man. Now, this is certainly something different that we've seen Sentomarui and Rayleigh use, because when they used their kind of haki, or Marigold as well, they just held up their hands and they were able to use the shock waves. You know, they didn't have to like tense up their bodies first, so it's probably a different kind of technique. Then again, remember, Hyou is, you know, elderly, so maybe that might have something to do with it, or you could look at it because, you know, Wano is isolated and they don't really know what Armament Haki is. Like, the rest of the world calls it Armament Haki, but that's not what the people of Wano call it. Same thing with the devil fruits. You know, he might call it something else. But here's the thing. From what we've seen, it's possible to use that shockwave technique while you are in armament, and also you can use it without it. I think we've seen that very clearly. We saw Sentomarui just use his palm thrust to knock Luffy away, and then we saw Rayleigh defeat the elephant without, you know, armamenting up his arms. And now we have this situation with Hyou, where he did vulcanize his body and his arm to defeat Alpaca Man. Now, you could always say, it was like, once again, oh, it was before the time skip, Oda didn't depict haki in that way. You know, I'm not really sure, though. Now that with all this stuff going on, with this other kind of haki being a confirmed thing to exist, I'm not really 100% sure, you know, if Oda did omit it on purpose, or if he really did have, you know, the idea from the beginning there was going to be two different schools of haki, or two different types of haki. I'm not really 100% sure, but I wanted to bring that up. And also, some other stuff from that chapter I left out, because Hyou also brings up the whole cutting paper thing with a sword. You know, once you know, with this special ability known as haki, you can cut a piece of iron or steel, but the same blade could also not cut paper, and that's something very, very similar to what Koshiro told Zoro, and then Zoro utilizes it against Mr. One, Daz Bones. So it's very obvious that that was the breath of haki that Zoro was starting to learn and during that fight. So that's pretty cool, like the foreshadowing of that all the way back in like Alabasta all the way up till now. You know, I didn't bring up that Koshiro was probably the swordmaster that taught Hyou. I mean, their ages, I mean, Hyou seems to be a lot older than Koshiro. I mean, age doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, Koshiro could be in his 50s, and Hyou could be in his 70s. That doesn't mean that he couldn't have learned anything from Koshiro. But then again, I started to think, like, the whole analogy with, like, you know, your sword can cut steel, but the same blade might not cut paper if you don't allow it to. You know, the secret is in what in the swordsman wants. You know, I could see that being a common expression in Wano. I don't see that coming just from Koshiro. Like, Koshiro is the only swordmaster that ever lived in Wano that came up with that analogy or that idea. It's a country filled with samurai that are always striving to get better at their craft. So it's probably Koshiro, but it might not be as well. It might just be a common saying in Wano, so who knows? A common way to teach people Haki. So yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. There was also a major mistake I made with Kawamatsu in the video. I said he might have a Kappa devil fruit, but then he was swimming in waters, so that was a big oopsie on my part. I'm going to be doing another video coming up about the yokai, because it looks like there might be like legit yokai in Wano, and I'm going to do something about that. But for right now, I just wanted to apologize for that mistake I made. But yeah, back to the video. Just wanted to make this little like 5-minute addendum. Now, I could see Luffy reaching the level that Sentomarui and Marigold had, you know, in this arc. You know, like I said, that doesn't seem to be all that difficult, just basic shockwave thrusts and, like, defensive maneuvers. That makes sense. And it also makes sense why Luffy would have gravitated more towards the vulcanization thing, because, you know, those kind of attacks we've seen are more for defense or, like, close combat fighting. Luffy's method of fighting, he can stretch, so he's more used to, like, long-range, mid-range kind of deal. He's used to, like, you know, gear third, you know, giant rifle. Oh, wait a second, I'm gonna add Haki to this, and then I can do that long range. And so that's the kind of Haki the vulcanization is more, you know, good at, you know, especially with Luffy stretching and all that. But, yeah, when it comes to defense and stuff, and just thrust keeping your enemy away and all that stuff, it seems like this invisible type is certainly more preferable than the vulcanization, especially when there's something really big coming at you, too. That could be a feat we could see Luffy maybe attain. Maybe, like, you know, they're fighting Kaido, and Kaido, like, grabs a giant rock or a ship or something, then throws it at Luffy and Kid and Law, and then Luffy's like, wait a second, guys, I got this. Like, Law's about to open up a room and block it, and Luffy just holds him back. He's like, wait, no, hold on, Traffy, I got this. I learned something while I was in prison. Hoo-yah! Boom! And then the rock just explodes or gets flung back toward Kaido or something. That would be cool. Nothing, like, crazy, you know, where we saw with, like, you know, Rayleigh, where he was apparently, and Rayleigh was holding back as well against that elephant. You know, Luffy, I mean, Rayleigh could have probably eviscerated that elephant if he really wanted to, but he wasn't the goal there. It was just to teach Luffy how to use the basics of Haki, or what the potential of Haki was. So I could see that. Maybe not throw the rock back at Kaido, but maybe just, like, boom, and then just, like, stopping it, and then it just drops in front of them, and he's like, yeah, I did it! So that would be pretty cool, you know? But yeah, so we don't really know much beyond that, but there certainly is that invisible Haki that's out there. For a long time, it was just stated that, well, it wasn't stated anywhere, it was just believed by the fandom that before the time skip, you know, Haki didn't take that appearance with, like, the black blades and the black, you know, armament or anything, because Oda maybe didn't get up to that point yet, or the fandom didn't know what Haki was, so therefore Oda didn't depict it. And then after the time skip, he's like, oh, okay, so this is what it actually looks like. This is what all of the characters saw at Marineford when Whitebeard took out his Bicento and he thrust it through Aokiji. You know, it didn't look like it had vulcanization on it, but that was because we didn't know about it. But maybe everybody at Marineford did see it with vulcanization. Now it's probably not. Probably it was that other kind of Haki, that invisible kind of Haki. And I don't think there's any difference between, like, you know, Rayleigh stated, he's like, oh, you can endow weapons with Haki. You know, it probably applies for the vulcanization as well as the invisible kind. It just depends on what's your preference, right? So, yeah, interesting. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you liked this video. And, yeah, Tekking signing out. Hold on. Let me try one more time. All right. Hold on. We got this. I'm going to do a fist this time. Let's do this. Ah!